Lawyers, what was the best gotcha moment you ever experienced? Story 1. Worked as a paralegal and investigator, working a trade secrets case involving the manufacture of dental wheels used to grind teeth. Long story, but go with it. Company A was a small family-owned manufacturer, but made the best product on the market from a small factory in the middle of nowhere. Sold massive amounts of product because of quality. Its location was remote enough, and the owner paid employees so well, the employees stayed there forever. All of them had worked there for 30-plus years. When the founder of Company A passed away, it was sold to International Company B because the kids and grandkids had no interest in the company. Company B then closed the old factory and tried to use Company A's formula at their facilities. Company B couldn't make the formula work. Now enter Company C, another international company who lost the bid on buying Company A. When Company C heard about the problems Company B was having, they bought the old factory facilities and then rehired the old staff to restart production. All the employees of old Company A were delighted to have their good-paying jobs back and went straight to work, producing the better quality items once again, and Company C's product worked. Company B sues Company C for trade secrets violation. When you buy a company, you buy their trade secrets, and this company had a bunch. This product was just one part, but the most profitable part of their operation. Thus, Company C, because of their action, was accused of violating the laws governing trade secrets. Company B even managed to get a temporary restraining order against Company C in federal court, and Company C had to stop manufacturing at the old plant now owned. This is when I enter the picture. Our firm represented Company C, and I was assigned to interview all the employees. I was in the living room of this delightful older lady in her late 50s that offered me snacks, asked me if I was married, and wanted to set me up with her granddaughter. You name it. Best and funniest interview ever. Story 2. I acted for a plumber who ripped up a tile floor to replace a pipe. He installed a new tile on top, but warned the owners not to walk on it for 48 hours. He emphasized not to let their kids or their dogs walk on it either. They walked on it, but alleged the defects were caused by improper installation. We had an expert do a report which confirmed that it was consistent with proper installation, but people walked on it too soon. Crazy homeowners still went to trial on it. In their evidence disclosure, they included a series of pictures. One of the pictures had in the foreground a tile that was tilted upwards. The background very clearly showed a dog's paw pressing down on the other end of the tile. This wasn't so much an I got them as they got themselves. Old boss of mine went through something similar. Machining a part for this guy, the coating vendor took forever and a day to apply the coating required, overnight. Was on the verge of being late when it was delivered. Boss tells the guy to give the part 4 to 5 days for said coating to cure before install, because while it was solid enough to not put fingerprints in, it was still soft. This was an email with the coating vendor CC'd. This was on a Monday. Wednesday rolls around, dude calls up having a conniption about the coating failing, and he's going to get his money back in court, yada yada. Boss says, step off, sue me. They go to court. Guy's first mistake was suing for the cost of the entire part plus coating, which was like $2,500. This makes no sense because the part itself was fine and made completely to the print. Coating was junk. This dumb guy presents pictures with dates of the part, coating failed, mounted to the mating part the same day my boss had emailed him and said wait a few days. Boss had printed out said email, which was sent 5 hours before UPS gave notification of the part being delivered. Story 3. I had a DUI case that seemed pretty standard. Police reports said that they saw a car with a headlight out leaving a BWW parking lot. He stopped him. The guy failed roadsides and blew a .09. I have a meeting with the kid to get his side of the story. My client was drinking in a BWW restaurant, watching some MMA fights, so it was super packed. Sometimes for events like this, police officers hang out inside to make sure no one gets in fights, steals stuff, etc. Anyway, my client was flirting with the bartender, and she asked him to go home with her when she got off. He, being a man of about 25, says yes. She says she'll drive him, and he tells her okay, but that he had to grab his cell phone charger out of his car. He walked out of BWW to do so, and the cop followed him out. It was pouring, so instead of just opening his door and reaching for his charger, the client got in the car to rummage through his glove box for it. When he steps out, the cop is standing there and demands for him to do roadsides, then hits him with DUI. We set for trial. At the motions hearing, I asked the cop if he'd followed my client out of BWW. He said no, that he'd been patrolling in his car. He said he had no idea who was in the car when he approached it. He swore the car was on. So at trial, I let him tell his story. I made him confirm to the jury that he was in his car doing routine patrol. He was never inside BWW. He didn't follow my client to his car to entrap him into a DUI. Then I played the video from inside BWW, clearly showing the cop watched my client get up from the bar and follow him out. Not freaking guilty. Story 4. My client's wife was on the phone with her new boyfriend when he got home from a barbecue with their son. He asked her who she was on the phone with, and she freaked out and ran to the bedroom and locked herself inside. She told the new boyfriend that he'd hit her and that she was black and blue, etc. New boyfriend is, understandably, I guess, freaked out. He calls the cops and relays everything wifey said to him. Then he tells her he called the cops. She freaks out even more because now she's about to be caught in the lie. Cops show up, she tells them he hit her on the back of the head, that's why they can't see the mark. The cops feel the back of the head and she winces. They arrest my dude. We take it to trial. When you testify at trial, certain prior convictions can be used against you to show the jury your character. Wifey had a prior conviction for falsifying statements to a grand jury in a different state a few years ago. In cross-examination, after she changed her story and accused me of attacking her, I asked her about her prior conviction for lying to a jury. She lied about it to our jury. She said it didn't happen. I very calmly approached her with the certified record of her conviction and asked her to confirm it was her name, date of birth, then walked back to my stand and asked the same question. She refused to answer this time, just glared at me. The jury walked my client. Story 5. My brother is a divorce attorney. His most memorable case, he was representing a guy in a divorce custody battle who was accused of horrific child abuse. Very graphic, very detailed depositions from the young kids against daddy. Things look grim. Then my brother notices the deposition transcript, done by social workers under oath, contains a question at the end from one of the kids. Did I hit my marks? My brother had previously tried to make it as an actor in Hollywood right out of high school, failing miserably, and decided to go into law, an altogether different form of acting. He wonders how little kids know about acting jargon. Subpoenas the wife's personal checking account during discovery. Sure enough, acting lessons. Deposes an extremely sketchy acting coach, and panicked coach quickly coughs up DVDs of practice interrogations with the kids. Hours of coaching the kids on exactly what imaginary things to say about daddy. He says it was his one and only Perry Mason moment in 20-plus years of practice, and dad got sole custody of the kids. Holy shoot, fake accusations of serious crimes makes my blood boil. The wife could have put her ex in prison for years over something he didn't do. Your brother saved that man's life, and those children too. A friend of mine suffered so much trauma over the years as a result of machinations during the parents' divorce and having to live with his mom and stepdad who demonized his father's side for 6 years till he moved out. Completely wrecked his trust in relationships. It's heinous. Story 6. This is so petty. I've had much bigger moments, but because of the character of the other side, this will always be my favorite. Doing a boundary dispute, a squabble over what was essentially a few inches of land. Official solicitor was a lawyer and an absolute jerk. He was acting for himself. The whole "a lawyer who acts for himself has a fool for a client" thing was bang on for him. But he was a deeply unpleasant guy, a bully who thought that he was the smartest guy in the room. Part of his case hinged on wheelie bins and how prior to the boundary having been moved, there wasn't space to store a full-size bin beside the house. The fact you now could clearly see the boundary must have moved. That was the extent of his evidence. It really was thin stuff. During the actual trial, he pulled a fast one by suddenly producing an old aerial photo, ostensibly to show the boundary at the front of the property had also moved. A fast one because you have to disclose stuff like that in advance. You can't just sit on something relevant and then suddenly whip it out at trial with a flourish. Whilst he was making his submissions that it should be admissible, I looked more closely at it, away from the bit of the boundary he said it was relevant to, and realized that it very clearly showed a wheelie bin in exactly the spot his case said there couldn't be one. Told the judge we were happy for the photo to be admitted after all, got the other side to confirm the date it was taken, then pointed out he'd just completely fed his case. That photo did him in for nearly $50K in adverse costs. Couldn't happen to a more deserving chap. Story 7. My brother is an attorney. He had a case where the guy said he was permanently disabled from a work accident. At a deposition, my brother overheard the guy talking about getting his house remodeled. He was already spending the money he thought he was getting. My brother drove by the house to see how much work was being done and saw the guy carrying bundles of roofing shingles up a ladder to the roof. This was before smartphones, so he drove to a Best Buy and bought a video camera, went back and recorded the guy. He had copies made and sent to the other attorney. The guy dropped the suit and was back at work the following Monday. My brother's client didn't want to pay for the video camera. He saved them thousands of dollars. They eventually paid, but he still gets a little peeved when he talks about it. Story 8. When I was a prosecutor, I had a guy who was representing himself. He was charged with car theft and evading. He was actually able to escape the cops for quite a distance and was captured later. His defense was that he wasn't the person. I got his calls from jail, and he talked so much to his girlfriend about how he had committed the crimes. The look on his face when I told him that I was providing him copies of his jail calls was great. Story 9. I was representing Mom in a bitter custody fight. Dad wanted full custody and argued Mom was an unfit parent. Mom wanted full custody because Dad had a history of domestic violence towards her and the kids. Dad's lawyer was doing a good job of painting her in a bad light during his cross-examination, and I was starting to get worried. His lawyer brought a close family friend as a character witness for Dad, who said the usual nice things about Dad. Then he said something about them owning chickens. I thought that was odd, so I asked more questions. I was able to get the friend to spill the beans that the dad owned chickens for illegal rooster fighting, and he'd take his minor children to these rooster fights, and when the children were acting up, he'd punish them by forcing them to feed the chickens, during which they would get pecked and scratched by the chickens. And obviously, the children were terrified of those chickens. I could see the color draining from Dad's lawyer's face. Mom got full custody. Story 10. I had a client whose $60,000 car was ruined by a shop that put in the wrong oil. We couldn't prove it at first. The engine blew up, oil leaked out, and evidence was lost. I subpoenaed their bank records and figured out they bought their oil from Costco. Called Costco and got their prices for the last 2 years. I then worked out the amounts they were spending, did some backhand math, and showed based on the values it was impossible they had ever bought the right oil. They settled in full immediately. Story 11. Had a client accused of leading the cops on a high-speed chase. The cop on the stand estimated he was going 90 miles per hour, but never actually clocked him. Then the cop identified where the chase started with me and where it ended. It lasted about 2 miles. Then we went through his log of when it started and when it ended, about 3.5 minutes. Once you walk through the math on that, the average speed of this chase was 35 miles per hour. Client got acquitted really quickly after that. Story 12. I was suing a landlord who failed to make serious repairs in order to force the tenant out. The hard part is proving bad intent, instead of mere idiocy, so you get higher damages. Code enforcement was involved, so I request those records. The landlord left a voicemail to the enforcement department saying to hold off on the fines. They will make the repairs as soon as the tenant is forced out. That was an easy case. Click on one of the videos you see on the screen now, or a Karen will sue you.